of December 3rd. Do I need to start over? I would like to call the planning board meeting of the Village of Lansing for December 13th, 2021 to order at 7:01 p.m. So the approval of the minutes, we had some complications. Apparently, I neglected to attach my edits and my suggestions to Mike and send them, and we realized that about 2 minutes ago. So we're going to delay the minutes until the next meeting.
Hey, Lisa.
Pardon me?
Mike, did you say Monica was in the waiting room or not? I just don't see her now.
You want to text her?
Unless that's her. I'll send her a text message.
So the next item on the agenda is the public comment period. Is there anyone in our audience this evening that has anything they would like to bring to the attention of the planning board that is not on our agenda tonight? And if not, I don't hear anyone speaking up. I would entertain a motion to close the public comment period.
So moved.
Tony?
I'll
Second.
second.
Jim? Tony to Jim, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. So we are now continuing the public hearing for special permit 2021-4516. I won't read the whole thing, but it's regarding Arrowhead Ventures, Tri-X Management Group to develop Area B of the Lansing Meadows Planned Development Area, which includes 18 single-family senior housing units, tax parcel number 47.1-1-17.21 and 47.1-1-17.29. Adjacent to the BJ's Wholesale Club, Area A in the proposed commercial section A1 of the PDA that is adjacent to the shops at Ithaca Mall. So I know, Mr. Lange, you have about 20 minutes with us, so perhaps we could address the things that probably are most critical for you and our legal counsel to bring to our attention.
Certainly. And thank you. Perhaps the proposed conditions that had been circulated since the last meeting could be a quick topic that we can hit on. I don't know that there's a lot of issues with those. One of the things that we had suggested is that we be given it slightly more than 2 business days to deposit the $153,000 amount, just so that, I guess my concern is I want to make sure I have a signed escrow agreement in place for this much money on behalf of both the village and my client. So I would just like some language that says that that deposit would be after the execution of the escrow agreement. I think that would be reasonable.
Yeah, I discussed that with our legal counsel. First of all, that one G is, and I both have this language. When we approve a special permit, we don't file it per se. So I would delete filing of a special permit, because once we approve it, it becomes final. It's a law or whatever.
Well, I was thinking it's actually what you file is the resolution that approves a special permit.
Oh,
There's New York State has a filing requirement for all your resolutions that doesn't apply here, but it starts a statute of limitations. But filing sort of is the official moment that it is approved now that it's been filed.
So when we approve a resolution for a special permit, that's the filing?
But there's a verbal approval. There's a written resolution. The written resolution is filed in the village clerk's office.
Yes.
And that's the official act. Okay.
Yes, our village clerk the next day signs it and gives me the official, and I record. And I.
Oh, right. Okay.
Perfect. That's what we're talking about. And my point is, that's why I said upon approval and filing. Because let's say there was approval tonight, you hopefully be filed, as Mike Scott said, tomorrow, which is wonderful.
It would,
But then in
tomorrow.
addition, there should be an escrow agreement that outlines the terms of that large sum of money and how it's held and how, and I also submitted to Natalie my proposed escrow agreement, and she had indicated to me that she has some potential edits to go over with me, which I can do. I don't know if we want to do that offline or I don't know
Yeah,
if we
I-
get through it. Limits.
offline for certain, since you have limited time and not everyone's had a chance to review the escrow agreement or my red lines to it yet.
So do you think we could make that, if there was an approval tonight, subject to legal counsel, meaning me and Natalie agreeing to that final terminology contained in the agreement? I think Natalie said you didn't have a lot of problems with what we had proposed, but you did have some
It's
suggested that.
addition, yeah.
Would you say that again, Natalie? It was kind of,
I have some additions to the agreement. I don't have many deletions, but definitely some things to add, especially as it relates to mechanics liens and releases being requested.
And I have not seen those to date. I think Natalie.
No,
was gonna
not
say-
yet. I mean, I just got this from you this morning, so I tried to get some edits in as quickly as I could.
Mhm.
But I didn't want to rush through it at the sake of the village.
Understood.
I think that one of the things that I would like to see is I really don't want to wait for 10 business days. I was thinking more like the end of the week, 4 business days, which would take us to what, Friday? I don't know.
I believe that, John, you and I can probably come to an agreement on an escrow by Friday.
Oh,
I don't-
certainly.
See that being an issue.
I would agree with that.
So that we could change that to 4 business days?
Yes,
Oh, if you come to agreement, it would be 4 days
yeah,
after that?
yeah, after the escrow agreement, yeah.
Okay,
Four
well,
business days following the escrow agreement.
well, actually, I would like it to be 3 days then, so that by the 22nd of December, for Christmas gift to all, it's done.
22nd.
Would that work?
I'll see if, is my client on the
Well,
line?
I'm on, John, just, again, 3 or 4 days or 4 days after the escrow agreement signed, we'll have the check to the village.
Yeah, so we can do that.
For the 22nd of December?
Well, I think you phrased it properly the first time, which is X number of business days after execution of the escrow agreement,
Okay,
which could be sooner than that, so. Than the 22nd, but we don't know.
I mean, if we can get the escrow agreement tomorrow, if you two have time, signed tomorrow, I mean, I can get a check down there by Thursday morning.
well, so we want it no later than 4 business days after the escrow.
Correct,
Okay, so we can change the language to do that,
certainly.
okay? Thank you, Monica, for joining. I don't know what time it was, Mike, for the minutes.
I think it
just
was like
now-
7:06. I'm sorry, I had technical difficulties.
No, I've got it written down.
Okay, good. I'm looking up and noticing there. Okay, so is that the main
That's the
thing?
same for I. That's the same thing for I believe, G and I.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, so,
Mike, you,
no,
Mike
go
agrees.
ahead. I'll take you. We got other things we gotta do. I just have to change the resolution. So let's just go ahead and finish what you have to finish while you're still there, John.
okay, thank you. And then the other one, which is I had struck the GML, but I understand if we put it back in, if the GML is done, it's done, and that condition technically has been met. So I don't have a
Yeah.
problem with leaving it in.
I feel more comfortable just leaving everything in for the record in perpetuity. Okay.
So
So in terms of some of the other things that we have, I think are really a matter of whether, the planning board feels comfortable with what our engineer and code officer and DPW folks and engineers with us tonight tell us that, have been met. And I think that's really kind of up to us to make. We can make decisions on those given their input, I think, but I wanted to be sure that we knew from a legal standpoint where we were with both our legal counsels. in terms of the
And
board,
Brent's joining in right now too, Lisa.
okay, good. At
And
7:11.
also, the additional name on there, Adam Frosino, is our engineer from McFarland Johnson. That you asked me
Yes.
if we could join.
Thank you, Adam, for joining.
So I've got him for also a short period tonight on such short notice.
Okay. So then if that's the case, we really should then just go quickly down our conditions. I think the soil and erosion control measures, do you want to share, do people want the screen to be shared or not? Yes, please, Mike, could you share the proposed conditions?
Yeah, I'll do them as though they were on the resolution.
Okay. Okay, so I have to move them over. No, I have to move us over. So starting soil and erosion control measures and water quality techniques, is there any, I don't think there was anything of concern there, correct? B, approval by the engineer and stormwater officer, anything there? Brent or Mike? No?
No, everything is currently being managed through the existing stormwater permit for the DEC.
Good. Okay, executed easement agreements. I think we got that today, isn't it, from Eric, Mike?
We got, I've got two of them. Is that right, Eric? You sent me NICEAG and then you sent me the sewer easement.
That's correct. That's correct.
So the sidewalk easement is still outstanding?
Well, that was supposed to be here today. This still should be here, hopefully before the night's out, but it was supposed to be. The meets
At
and bounds.
11:59 PM.
If it,
Oh, hey, Lisa, can I ask a question about that one? And it might be more for, I don't know, council or something. So it says a copy of the executed easement agreement. Is there a difference between an executed agreement and just the submission that Eric made to Tompkins County?
That was that's an executed easement.
That is,
agreement.
okay, that was my
Yeah.
question. Okay,
So the sidewalk easement is coming,
Yes.
but it's still outstanding. Okay, D, I don't think there's anything there. We know that the county stuff is taken care of. Certificate of compliance being 2 and 3, a maintenance agreement between stormwater facilities. Is that basically set?
That's in process. He's been working on that, but I think that was also, I mean, that according to this is to do before buildings 2 and 8 are built. So I told him to focus on the
Right.
sidewalk and get these ones done first.
Okay, and of course, the control there is the certificate of compliance.
But
Okay.
that shouldn't be that far behind.
Okay, now I noticed the landscaping plan that we got in the packet still didn't have the phases indicated somehow. The one I,
not in there, but I do have. Lisa, I do have,
you highlighted one for us, so,
I signed the one that Mike highlighted in his office.
oh,
just
you
to-
did. Okay, good. That's what so that's been signed off and will become
Yes.
part of the final packet.
yes, I have one that it has his signature on it.
Okay, I just want to say about the landscaping that should there be any additional changes, obviously, Eric, you're going to have to come back to us.
Okay,
So if anything changes that you can't put trees in, I think what we'd be looking for is where you're going to take, whatever you take out, where you're going to put them instead, sort of thing. But we'll
Okay.
deal with that if and when.
okay.
Other than that, I think by virtue of this, we were going to say the landscaping plan, if we vote on the special permit, would be considered approved as submitted. Here we are into the escrow wording. So how should this be? Upon approval and filing, do we all feel comfortable with that? Natalie, do you have any? I don't have any trouble with that,
I don't
but.
have any problem with that.
So we'll say we'll incorporate the language that John has given us.
Okay.
on the red line, which, and filing of special permit, an escrow will be established and funded within 4 business days after the
Say execution of an
fully
escrow.
executed escrow agreement is as determined by the village. Is that correct?
That's fine with us.
4 business days after the execution.
Of, oh, I may say,
Escrow agreement.
of a escrow agreement. Of the escrow agreement, I guess, or I don't know, an escrow agreement. And John did initial caps there. I don't know if that's necessary, but otherwise it would be of escrow agreement. So upon approval and filing of both of those things,
We don't have to file an escrow agreement.
but we do have to file the special permit upon approval. So go back to the beginning, Mike,
Yep,
upon approval and filing. Of special permit 20 for the escrow amount will be established and funded within 4 business days after the execution of the escrow agreement in the amount as determined by the. And then at the end of that, in accordance with the terms of the executed escrow agreement added in, but do not, well, fine.
in accordance with,
The terms of the executed escrow agreement. Executed escrow agreement. Period. Shoot, goes to the next line, page, darn. Yeah, choke up. Good work. But would you make that one last sentence, combine that last statement, get rid of after the period after complete the work, and then carry on with in accordance with the terms. Thank you. Is that okay? Did we get that?
I think so. I don't know if John can
Yeah.
see that.
Yeah, I think I've got the gist of that. We'll get that language straightened out.
If we vote on it tonight, that'll be what it is.
Well, that can be what it is. It's gonna be the same as the language we've been talking about. So
Okay.
who is Mike editing it as we speak or not?
Yes, he is.
you can't
Can
tell.
you
by
not?
the-
Yes,
You can't
he's
tell. by the
editing the
select-
resolution.
He's on audio. You want me to read through it one last time, John?
Okay, if somebody could just read it out loud one final time, and I'm sorry
Okay.
about that. Yeah.
Upon approval and filing of special permit 2021-4516, an escrow account will be established and funded within 4 business days after the execution of the escrow agreement in the amount of $152,859 as determined by the Village of Lansing Board of Trustees in connection with the building of a sidewalk along Oak Crest Road within the village right-of-way where the subject property is located. Failure to establish and fund said escrow account will result in an immediate stop work order and withdrawal, maybe it's withdrawal of withdrawal, sorry, withdraw AL of applicant's building permit, right? Pursuant to Village of Lansing Code Section 14559D9. If the applicant fails to complete the work by July 26, 2022, the village may use the escrow to funds to complete the work in accordance with the terms of the executed escrow agreement.
Thank you.
Okay, now, oh, it has to move over somehow. Oh, I have to move us over. H. So now we're in an escrow account shall be established and funded in the amount to be determined by the Village of Lansing Board of Trustees and Department of Public Works for the completion of the connection running through the eastern portion of the A1 parcel to Hickory Hollow Road. If said connection is not completed by July 1, 2022. Upon written notification of the escrow figure, the applicant shall fund the escrow account within 2 business days. Failure to establish and fund said escrow account will result in an immediate stop work order and withdrawal again AL of applicants' building permit pursuant to the Village of Lansing Code, Section 145, 59D9. If the applicant fails to complete the work by July 26, 2022, the village may use the escrowed funds to complete the work.
So that language should mirror in its terms, the language of the other escrow
Right, I think it does.
amounts. So, yeah, so it's, I mean, the reference to, the written escrow, signed escrow agreement.
I'll make those changes over when you get through with this.
Understood. And folks, I have to apologize. I have to go into this meeting right now. I am very, very sorry. But I'm sure most of these other items, I think we're totally fine with. It's just all these escrow deposits that we want to be careful with. So I thank you very much for tonight, and I'll follow up with Eric after I get out of my town meeting later tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, so we're now at I, which is upon approval and filing. Are you there?
Yeah.
Upon approval, Mike? Are you not going to continue to do the resolution?
Yeah, I'm gonna change, as soon as you're done with it, and you go back to things, I'll change them I'll let you just get through them and then I'll make changes.
Oh, so you don't want to continue to modify as we go along?
No, because I'll only slow you up.
Okay. Upon approval of special permit, blah, 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 an escrow account for landscaping for phase 2 will be established and funded within 2 business days. In the amount of, and there was no, oh, no, there was a suggestion there. Again, I think we would say within 4 business days, just
Yeah.
to be consistent.
I think we just mirror what we did in G, right?
Yep, that one is the same one. So, but that's important, that be 4 business days. Failure, same stuff. Village may use the escrow funds to landscape the open space now designated for phase 2 buildings if condition N is not met by July 26, 2022. Okay, next would be written approval by the Village of Lansing Superintendent of Public Works of the plan for all proposed sidewalks, curb cuts, and sidewalk connections required to be installed. So John, what do you say about that? John Courtney.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep,
Everything seems to be going as planned. We're just in the final phase of the review of the documents.
okay. Can you scroll up? Thank you. K, written approval by the Cayuga Lake Intermunicipal Water Commission of water. I'm assuming we have that. I think, Brent, you told us last time, Village of Cayuga Heights, and we have that as well.
So we do have Village of Cayuga Heights sewer, but I think that the Cayuga, what you have there, which stands for the letters for Bolton Point, I think.
Yep.
And we have our sewer permit.
Do we have that?
But I don't
We-
think
I-
it isn't Southern Cayuga Lake Intermunicipal Water Slick is water, not sewer.
Yeah, so I don't know whether we have that from them, written approval that of the water consumption. Who would?
I think for the water consumption that's been established by Village of Cayuga Heights for sewer.
Oh, based on water, no?
I unfortunately, I'm having technical difficulties tonight, so I'm on my phone and I can't see much of anything. So I don't know if the condition that you're reading is asking whether or not we have the water system approval from Bolton Point, or if it's asking for the water consumption to
The
establish
latter.
the amount of.
It's the latter, it's water consumption, but I'm assuming if you've done the sewer that you must have the
Yes.
consumption.
Yes.
Correct. That is
Okay,
correct.
all right. So written approval by the Village of Cayuga, the sewer system.
Yes.
Have that. Review and review and written approval by Tompkins County Department of Planning, 239. We know we have that. N, the deadline for completion of foundation work for Phase 2 Buildings 8 and 14 is the scheduled planning board meeting of July 26, 2022. O, the deadline for completion of Phase 1 Buildings 2, 20, 26, 32, and all site work, infrastructure, site work, sidewalk, and all site infrastructure, site work, sidewalk, and landscaping for Phase 1 is delineated on the approved planning plan is the scheduled planning board meeting of July 26, 2022. Oh, I see. The parens starts at the buildings and ends after the planting plan meeting. The deadline for completion of Phase 1 is July 26, 2022, including all of those items. So P, the deadline for completion of Phase 2, Buildings 8 and 14, is the scheduled planning board meeting of October 31st, 2023. Q, if any deadline under this special permit is not met, an applicant in the sole discretion of the planning board has provided no reasonable basis for delay, the planning board reserves the right to take such action as the board deems appropriate, including but not limited to withdrawing the applicant's building permit or requiring additional escrow accounts to be established and funded for the costs of complying with the special permit as determined by the Lansing Village of Lansing Board of Trustees and Department of Public Works. On to R, consistent with the PDA requirements, senior housing is the purpose of this development. S, the roadway in the proposed planned development shall be a one-way roadway and privately held. T, all open spaces in the proposed development area shall be graded, landscaped, and maintained by the applicant. U, no certificate of compliance shall be granted until all infrastructure, landscaping, and sidewalk work for the site has been completed by applicant. If applicant applies for a temporary certificate of occupancy prior to the completion of said work, the applicant must establish and fund separate escrows for the completion of the Phase 1 landscaping and or the A1 sidewalk in the amounts determined by the village's engineers and Department of Public Works. Temporary certificate of compliance shall not be issued until such escrows are established and funded. If applicant has issued a temporary certificate of compliance and has not completed all Phase 1 landscaping and A1 sidewalk work by July 26, 22, then the village may use the escrowed funds to complete the remaining work. And our final condition, unless somebody else has something else they'd like to add, no development of area A1 can commence until Phase 1 and Phase 2 are completed and receive all certificates of compliance. Now, earlier today, I know that John, Courtney, you and I think Dondi and Adam and all worked together very diligently to go over the as-built, and everything is okay there?
There is some slight modifications that still need to be done, but yes, they have completed most of the large items.
Okay, so Natalie, when there are these little last minute things that still haven't been done, do we need to note those anyway in the resolution?
These are conditions that,
Which condition would that be, John?
They got most of the as-built requirements. We have comprised a list that there's just this small bullet items and just really small details that need to be done, completed. So, but basically that's on the sewer as-built. The water and the storm sewer and everything else has been, the design has been approved.
Okay, so I don't know is anywhere in the conditions we have the description or the phrase as built. Do we need to do something with that? Mike, would you say?
At this point, I would say no. Oops.
Okay,
It does, I mean, John and Eric, I mean, they're at the 1 yard line. They ought to be able to fall in the end zone on this one.
Okay,
I agree.
all right. So we're kind of at this, that at this point, if we feel we're basically there, does anybody on the board have any questions at all? Or any reservations about this resolution? Or do we feel that we might be ready to close this public hearing? Anybody? Tony?
I'm ready to close the public hearing.
Yep, I'm fine with everything.
Okay. Okay, it looks like nodding heads, all right. That being the case, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I move that we close the public hearing.
Mike Baker, second. Who's seconding?
I'll second.
Okay, Monica. All those in favor? I see 5 hands. Thank you very much. It has passed. The public hearing is now closed. Given that we now have the public hearing closed, oh geez, I've got to do my general conditions. Just a second. It's been a while since we had to do this. So before we move to our resolution, the general conditions, no special permit will be granted by the planning board or the board of trustees unless the requested activity meets the following requirements. 1, it will not be detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, or general welfare. 2, it will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the vicinity or neighborhood. 3, it will not impede the orderly development of the vicinity or neighborhood and is appropriate in appearance and in harmony with the existing or intended character of the vicinity or neighborhood. 4, street system and off-street parking facilities can handle the expected traffic in a safe and efficient manner. 5, natural surface water drainage ways are not adversely affected. 6, water and sewage or waste disposal facilities are adequate. 7, the general environmental quality of the proposal in terms of site planning, architectural design, and landscaping is compatible with the character of the neighborhood. 8, lot area, access, parking, and loading facilities are sufficient for the proposed use. 9, the requested use or facility conforms in all other respects to the applicable regulations of the district in which it is located. And finally, 10, the applicant has shown that steps will be taken where necessary to meet all performance standards and all other applicable general regulations. Anybody on the board have any concerns with those 10 conditions? If not, I would entertain a motion to accept or to say that all the conditions have been met.
So moved.
Second.
Tony? Okay, seconded by Mike. All those in favor? Great. The general conditions are met. So it's T.I. Mike Baker. Okay. That being done, we now can move to our resolution. And this is where we have to be sure that we've got everything changed that we want changed, so that we don't have to amend anything. So I believe that we captured everything in G. Is that correct? Where's G? There's G.
And I
That was,
just changed H, and I'm in the process of changing I.
so you have changed H to mirror this one?
Yes, and I'm trying to make that change now to I. So
we'll look over H to see. H. upon a written notification. Escrow account. The escrow. Up and show some information. Within 4 business days of the execution of the escrow agreement. Failure to establish a claim for escrow account will send it to- Okay. You were doing I. Are you done with I?
No, I'm still working on I.
Okay.
Like I also sent you an email, kind of already making the changes to I. If you just, it might save you time to copy and paste it in, or
Okay,
whatever you want to do. Or you can just type it in.
why don't you go ahead, Lisa, if you want to go over all this. Do you have a copy of it yourself?
I just have the redlined copy.
You want to go through this while Mike adjusts the I, or is that the one we're doing right now?
Upon approval and filing, it has to say. But if Natalie did it and you want to just cut and paste hers, if you can get it, but maybe it was upon approval and filing. We're on I, right?
For business days.
But go up to the very beginning. The very beginning of I.
Yep.
Can we just copy all of G down here and paste it and just change the name?
No, we're not cutting and pasting. We're going to do each one separately. Too many
Okay.
mistakes get made. An escrow account for landscaping for phase 2 will be established and funded within 4 business days. In accordance with the fully executed landscape escrow agreement after the execution, after the execution of the
Hold on a second, folks. And the amount of $15,000, okay, and then,
he actually said landscape escrow agreement. Do we need to distinguish in these or not?
I don't think so.
Okay. And then at the end,
basically, it tells you what you have to do at the end, so I don't need to change that.
Except I think condition N should be M.
yes, that's what he changed condition M, and
No,
as in no.
M is
to M.
239, M is a 239.
Oh, he put that back in. Wait, what am I looking at? There's too many versions of this.
Exactly. That's
this
why
point, it's
so then you have to do it. Okay, so it's still N. Because yeah,
Yes.
very
still
good. Good work, team. All right. I think the only other change, I think that's it, actually. So does that read the way we want it to? Natalie, I'm looking for your input
Yes.
on that. Okay.
Yep.
And then at the end, after January 26, 2022,
Oh, where are you?
on I, the last sentence,
Oh, and I, yeah,
let me read through how, may use escrow funds, if not by July, in accordance with the terms of the executed escrow agreement.
okay, so how was it, say again, so upon approval and filing of special permit, blah, blah,
Mhm.
an escrow account for landscaping for phase 2 will be established and funded within 4 business days after the execution.
Mhm.
How about I just do this?
Yes. what you're doing.
Oh, okay, you're down there. I was up the top still.
Accordance,
Got two
With,
with,
yeah, he can fix it with the terms. With, in accordance with the terms. Agreement,
agreement.
agreement.
Nope.
Yep, where are you? No, you're in the wrong
Went
one
up
now.
to H.
Okay, undo.
There you go.
All right, so now,
The terms.
of the
accordance
terms
with the terms.
of the executed, wasn't it?
Mhm.
Of the executed
Escrow agreement.
escrow agreement. To land, and I think that's it then, right?
Yes.
So upon approval, the failure to establish a said person no company village may use the escrow to fund in accordance with the terms of the executed to landscape now designated phase 2. Okay. Is that it?
Yes.
I think that's it. Okay. So I believe, do we need to read anything else for anyone's satisfaction from the resolution? Now that we've made these changes? No? If not, are we ready to take a vote on this? Mike, you want to take it down so I can see everybody? I don't want to miss this. Okay. So if we agree that all our conditions have been met, which we did, everyone has stated that we're close enough, or obviously there's some safeguards in there. If they don't happen, certain things aren't going to happen. I'm ready to entertain a motion to pass the resolution for special permit number 2021-4516. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to pass the resolution.
Second.
Monica? And seconded by Mike. All those in favor? It is unanimously and it is passed, I'm happy to say.
Thank you.
Okay. Adam, I hope, thank you for coming. I'm sorry that well, I'm actually delighted that we didn't need to call on you tonight. So thanks for your hard work with working with our engineers too. Appreciate it.
No problem. Have a good
Okay,
night.
you too.
Thanks, Adam.
All right. The next,
Thank everybody for your help on this.
you're welcome.
I'm going to sign off here.
So the next item on our agenda is to open the public hearing for the final plat of cluster subdivision proposal 2021-4464 by Beer Properties. Beer Properties and Hunt Engineers are providing a final plat of a cluster subdivision for property parcel 45.2-1-47.2, which consists of approximately 40 acres of vacant land located between Craft Road and Bush Lane. Final plat, along with the details of proposed duplex lots, will be reviewed by the planning board. We've had so much time elapsed between all these meetings that I really feel Although I have gone back and looked at past minutes and whatnot, but I think we need to sort of take a step back and get a refresher here as to what we're trying to do.
Hey, so David Bear here.
Uh-oh.
We have, can
Is
you,
anybody else having trouble with his audio?
A little bit, yeah.
can you all hear me?
Well, you're very it's like, can you turn it? It's almost like the volume is too loud or something. It's very fuzzy.
Distorted.
I'll try to adjust it.
Or maybe David, just speak a little more soft.
Yeah,
I can try to speak a little more soft too. Is that
That
better?
sounds
better.
perfect
That's
right there,
much
actually,
better.
yeah.
Oh,
I
okay.
know. There is, I know I'm probably yelling too. It's very hard when you're not in person to sort of,
Okay.
okay,
I
much
got,
better.
I got my personal volume adjusted. So I have Chris Wood here from Hunt Engineering, and Ray Schlotter's our attorney. Chris is ready to, give a review of kind of the preliminary approved plan versus the final submitted plan. And if you're ready for it, Chris is ready to review the whole thing.
Well, I guess. I know that we have also what you had submitted to us with the open items that have been discussed somewhat in the past, but I guess if Chris wants to do that, that's fine. Mike, Scott, do you have any other suggestions that?
Well, I mean, it wouldn't be bad to have Chris review some of the changes that were made from the preliminary plat to the final plat, some of the changes that the applicant actually made, and then some of the requested changes that we had during our engineers meeting. And then there's still the elephant in the room as far as the placement of the road system. So, but I think the good start would be to have Chris review the changes that have been made since the preliminary plat was approved.
Okay, so Chris, you have the floor.
Okay, I am going to share my screen, and the map that's going to come up is a comparison that you'll see between the parcel lines and the road alignment between the preliminary plat approval, which will be the red lines when I zoom in, and then the final plat approval, which is the green lines. And you'll notice as we go through this, starting down at Craft Road, you can see the green and the red. The green shade is the final plot, and then the red line around the edge here is the road alignment for the preliminary plat. And then as we go, you can see we've made some minor adjustments to the lot lines to allow for better configurations of the stormwater ponds and to meet the minimum lot size requirements for the mix or the medium density zone district that we have here. And as we come up through the west road to the Millcroft extension, you'll see that the red line and the green shade are the exact same as we go through the intersections from preliminary to final. The only spot that the road alignment is altered is right here on the southern portion of the west or the loop road. And we had shifted this up to allow for a better configuration of this intersection to allow for a full T here for snow plowing activities and drainage features on this lower end. But as you see that the differences between the preliminary and final road alignments and lot lines are very minor in nature, majority of which are with minor shifts to the lot lines. to meet the minimum requirements for that. So that's the big elephant in the room, as Mike had said, is the road alignment here. Most of the other items that were commented on as part of the final plat submission will be corrected and adjusted. This was the one major item that was outstanding still that Ray and David were working through with you guys to resolve.
Well, I think, going back through the minutes, whether we were not specific enough, perhaps that is the case, but there were questions at the time about this preliminary roadway. And I know that Brent had conversations with them and had some concerns that he voiced. And I know that we also did go and figuring that it would be worked out between the various parties. So at one point, I noticed that Mr. McCauley very wisely said, how come if we still have some of these issues, which are not reflected necessarily in the minutes, it was a preliminary thing, we don't put conditions on really. We say, well, okay, you need to work with our engineers and our DPW now. Sort of said, how come we're going to vote on this if it's just, there's some issues still outstanding? And our council said it's really just an acceptance of the preliminary plat so that the Beers can move forward. So I think we thought we were being helpful, but apparently there's some confusion as to, what was intended after some of those meetings with our engineer and DPW folks about the elephant in the room. And honestly, it's the most, it's kind of the big deal. I think some of the other issues we have changed, but there were, the biggest changes were to the wetlands. There were just huge changes made from the preliminary plot or plan to the later that were just quite striking and never discussed or brought to the attention of anyone in the village until the final plat was brought. The wetlands was quite shocking, actually. I don't know how you can just go changing wetlands. Well, we got a different engineer. Well, I guess if you ask enough people, you're going to get an answer that you want, but it just undermines our confidence. Let's put it that way. So I'm not sure I understand fully the resistance to modifying the roadway. And I'm wondering if maybe you can help us to understand that. I know that there was something stated about the character of it changes the character of the development, but I guess I would like to hear more specifically what, from both sides, frankly, what the concerns are with the road. But I'd mostly like to hear from either Chris or Mr. Beer about this.
Can I ask, before we start that, could please zoom out so we can see more of the plot here? Thank you. Thank you. That's good. Thank you.
So can somebody tell us how, if the roadway is changed to some of the things that I believe were discussed early on, possibilities, how this changes the character, for example?
I'd be happy to address that. And as stated in the letter the long letter that we wrote to you in late July or August, this development started out as in our minds as trying to put together a series of pocket neighborhoods that would really be kind of a unique layout for a subdivision in the village, and that would be done by having many lots that kind of share backyard areas that wouldn't really be considered backyard areas. They would be front yard areas, and in many ways the primary facades of the structures, so that all these houses would kind of face and interact with each other. to encourage residents to interact with each other to build a community. And what we didn't want to do from the very beginning was, make another kind of cookie cutter, classic American subdivision where houses are oriented to the streets and not oriented to one another. Now, through many variations of this, we got to what was approved in the preliminary plan, which we felt, was a big compromise on our part, but you all found acceptable in terms of a general layout. And we, felt great relief when that was finally approved in November of 19. And, we set Hunt out, let Hunt loose to flesh out the engineering details. Now, if we go to a configuration that, was encouraged by village staff, we lose many of those areas where lots kind of share backyards and can really be oriented to one another. We end up with more of this kind of grid system, classic subdivision where houses and residents of houses don't as easily interact with one another. So that is in 3 minutes or so, our greatest objection to the notion of moving the roads around, reconfiguring things so that, we have more of a, classic, somewhat a classic subdivision with more kind of insulated or isolated building lots rather than ones that interact with one another.
I have a question.
This is Tony. So the difficulty I'm having here is having to imagine comparison of the plan that we're seeing in front of us and an alternative where instead of having 2 T intersections, you have a single 4-way. I hear what you're saying about changing of character, but I need to be able to see what you're saying. So do you have an alternative that you can show us where you, instead of having those 2 T intersections, you have a single 4-way at the location of the northern of those 2 Ts?
We do. The village staff and consultants gave us a sketch of such a scenario, and Hunt made a drawing to scale, and we dismissed it as something we didn't want to build. It does not fit into our program. Now, I, as the developer and the one with so much vested in this, I want to be the one to be able to make those decisions, subject to your approval, but that's my thinking on the situation. I don't consider it a choice of option A or option B. What was approved at the preliminary level was option A, and that's what we want to run with.
Well, cluster subdivisions are a little different than just a straight code subdivision, as you know, and it does require some kind of negotiation between the developer and the village. It's very much like a special permit in that it's not exactly a right, it's a privilege. And so, this is a little irregular in that we are kind of used to working with our developers. And because these issues were raised pretty early on, indeed it was after the preliminary plat, but as I said, I think we thought you were anxious to move forward, but it sounds like you're pretty fixed that this is it. Or that's, or what?
Ms. Shalene, we spent a year and a half, working with the board to come up with the plan that was approved at the preliminary level. I think it's not reasonable to approve something at the preliminary level and then continue to expect changes, gross changes to the plan after the preliminary approval. Now,
And yet you did make rather gross changes. Aside from the road, there were just very large changes that were never discussed before you presented them. I think it was in March of 2021.
The changes that have been made since the preliminary approval were those that were necessitated by a greater level of understanding of the site after a greater study of the wetlands issues and a greater study of the stormwater requirements. And that's entirely appropriate to have happen between a preliminary and final. You can't expect to go for the preliminary to be the absolute final version, because you haven't done enough research and investigation into the minutia of the engineering to know. And that's the reason that there is a preliminary and final review. The preliminary gets the gross stuff on the table, and the final takes into account, all the details that come up upon greater study of the site.
I couldn't say it better myself, but you see, all of the comments that you just made also apply to us. We see the preliminary plat. It is called preliminary for a reason. And I mean, so we also get more input and have a better understanding of what is needed. And so it's a give and take is the point. I mean, you stated it perfectly for how both sides look at this. And the same thing that you just stated applies to us too.
Ms. Gilleen, the road
Could I just, it's Schley line, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Excuse me. The placement of the roads at the preliminary was crystal clear. And that hasn't changed to the final. All the other changes that have been made are addressing, greater information that's been gleaned in the engineering process between preliminary and final. Things certainly just weren't known. But at the preliminary level, you all certainly saw exactly where we wanted the roads and the type of intersections that we wanted, and y'all approved it.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Where are the final or the second version of the wetlands? Can you just point those out, or is there a map with an overlay?
Chris, is that something you have access to quickly?
Yes, I can. Let me stop sharing this and I'll pull it up and I'll share another screen here.
Which number is that on the final site plan drawings, Chris?
Sorry, what was that?
Which L number is it? I have the full one. Oh, I think it might.
Trying to pull them up electronically. I don't have it right in front of me as far as the plan. It should be 3.0.
0. Oh, what's the 0? L0?
L30 should be the plan number.
L30, okay.
Yeah, actually, it's probably easier to see them on L20
Yeah,
as far as the wetland locations.
Yep.
You want the final plat that you sent me for L20? Because I can bring that
Yes.
up, Chris.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think Mike can pull it up for you.
Yeah, I have it up right now. If you want to, I can share it, or Mike can share either one.
Oh, go ahead, Chris. If you got it, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yep. I'll zoom in here. So you've got a little wetland down here that attaches to a roadside ditch, and then we have the dry intermittent channel that comes across the site, comes up through here, and then goes into the larger wetland that extends up to the northeast of the property. And then there's another pocket wetland down here behind lot 34 and 35 on the site. And then we have the creek or stream in here to the north. It's actually on the southern edge of the Millcroft Way subdivision.
Hey, Chris, I have a quick question. Do you mind? This is John.
Yes, sir.
Can you move to the bottom of the screen? I would just like to show the planning board something that I wanted to bring up a little early. There is approved roadway that comes down through here. That means all these lots right through here will have roads on both both sides of the house. So with that said, I mean, one of the concerns we have is additional requested curb cuts along this section here. So I'm gonna try to erase that all for you so I can get it off my screen here.
So
I just
this,
wanted to bring that to
John,
the
this
attention.
section-
Yeah,
This section here, there's still a 10-foot strip of privately owned land between what would be the town right of way or the village right of way and the back of all of these lots you just pointed out that it'll be owned by the homeowners association still.
but
That seems like a chess
So the-
move to me.
Well, it was just how the alignment laid out with the right of way. And actually it's going to get to be wider because we've got to narrow the right of way up by 10 feet per some of the other comments that were received with the submission of the final plat.
well, I think the code stipulates 60, not the 70. But John, you're talking about the Lansing Trails 3 or whatever?
Yeah,
I was-
absolutely. It's none of my business, but
No,
you
it
know,
is actually.
I didn't see the 10-foot strip there. I mean, like I said, it feels like a chess move to me. But I mean, I'm also concerned as somebody that cares about the village tax base that it could depreciate the properties there, knowing that these people can't send a kid out in their backyard because there's another road there. If they moved everything like the village requested to do, the houses would back up similar to the pocket park that they wanted. And it would just make everything, the symmetry in the village very much like. It's not, you know, that's one of my concerns, obviously, is the traffic and pedestrian safety to it.
And so when you had discussions, well, I think to Tony's point, you know, this is clearly the sticking point for both sides. So I guess it would be really helpful to the planning board, whether you send it to us or whatever, to see from our staff some of the suggested, you know, from the engineers, some of the suggested alternatives to this road, because there's just a lot of questions here that I think it's going to make it really hard to move forward. We just need some more information as to possibilities. Now, I know that I don't know where you were going to put some of the, go back to the, as Mr. Cross requested, go to the Army Corps of Engineers. I don't know where that's at regarding the wetlands, but that changed, and we changed lot sizes, and you decided to put in a garage of sorts, but I don't think that's quite happened yet either. There just seems to be, we need to have some more information about possibilities. They don't have to be full-blown engineering things, but just to, as Tony said, what were the alternatives suggested? And one of the things that is important, and I do remember it coming up early on, I have it circled on the very preliminary plats that I have, the documents. I had certain intersections circled, the one being the one that will connect ultimately on the east end of Janivar there. I think it's Janivar, maybe it's Craft, I don't know. And we
This intersection here?
the one that we were just, going, I'm sorry, did I say, I thought I said east. No, the one we were just at, that, that John was
This-
just, that one, yes.
This one here,
Ultimately,
it's still a paper street.
yeah. That is eventually going to connect, I guess. Is that true? I don't
Yeah,
know.
we laid it out so that that southern intersection on the loop road, Millcroft Way, could be extended through the right of ways that are there. I mean, Craft Road is showing to basically extend through here, and then another road go down to the south here.
Right, I don't know. Oh, this is the park land there, I think, isn't it? Is that the Ned Hickey Park?
Yeah, at least
Yes,
that
down-
parkland is gonna have to stay there, and then what Chris is showing is part of the egress exit for Lansing Trails 3. It's gonna be required they have a second exit.
Well, I guess my point being that we can't forget about that. We know that that's gonna be. So we have to take that into consideration for the, we have to worry about connectivity of these various projects. And we know what they are. We've had their plan for a long time. We know they need another exit. So, I mean, I think this whole roadway situation is pretty complex, and I don't pretend to know without having input from our engineer and our DPW.
To your point, Lisa, that if and when that Lansing Trails 3 is developed, it would increase traffic on that Millcroft Way there where the intersections are. So you do have a good potential of increasing traffic.
Well, and we have to, the planning board can't just worry about one project at a time. We have to worry about how they, interact with one another. And so I really think that we're going to have to get some real work done here in terms of understanding before.
Can I make one point out real quick?
Yes.
Did you notice if we slid the road, that loop road there to the north to line with that, to make it a four-way intersection? I just want to make a point that there's really no impact to wetlands there. Around that whole area, there's not a significant amount of wetlands. We laid it out for them to show that, reflect that it wasn't going to impact the wetlands when the village engineer and I did it.
Were any of the lots lost?
No, actually, we thought they could have actually gained a lot.
Okay. Well, I just need to see some of the other possibilities, because I don't know, have we ever I don't know, have we ever just had a development own all of their roads? Just keep
That
it
would, that
all-
would be the next, that would be the next step. If the village doesn't think this road could be advantageous to the village owned, we would just deny the acceptance of it and that would have to get some kind of a homeowners association to maintain it.
And that would, including the connection, the main connection to Millcroft, correct? I mean, just all of the roads, in fact.
Well, we could pick and choose if they offer dedication, or we could just deny everything, one or the other. I mean, we may pick the connection back to Millcroft as a thoroughfare and just not accept the loop road on the eastern loop there.
Okay. Well, all right.
If I could just comment, that's without doing the legal research, that sounds like an interesting possibility.
It would be costly ultimately for you, I would assume, just the full maintenance of that over time, but I mean,
There's pluses and minuses to everything. We have to weigh them, but if the village isn't willing to allow us to build what was preliminarily approved, then we've got a couple of options, and one of them might be to not dedicate the roads.
I think the other piece of that too, Lisa and John, and I'm sure you've talked about, well, and we mentioned it before too, is just overall safety. Whether the village
That's
accepts a road or not, are they safe for the village? And I think, like, as you know, like we talked about Lansing Meadows, we discussed that, and even having that discussion there, that's going to stay privately owned. But, at one of the points, we didn't think it was safe and it wasn't going to meet code. So they had to change that into a one-way loop for that area.
I just like to point out, like, yet again, everything that you see meets every applicable code and regulation, period.
And there's other places in the village where there are things that meet applicable code and regulation. And there have been many discussions about the safety of those intersections, and how if we could go back and change them when the opportunity arises, that we would. And moving forward, we're going to keep things like that at the forefront of our discussions to make sure that new developments and redevelopments are safe for the village.
I just, I don't see that there is any desire on the part of your properties to be at all flexible here. So I don't know where this will go, but I for one need to see some of the suggested alternate plans, I guess. First, we'll start with that.
May I just,
May I be heard, please?
Yes, you can, Mr. Schlather, thanks.
Thank you. So I know that Ms. Shaline, when you, at the last meeting, you mentioned that we should go back and look through the minutes, and I have done that. And I think what's instructive is that if you go back, Mr. Beer has indicated that there was a discussion that was begun almost a year and a half before the preliminary approval was granted in November of 2019. And there are some very telling minutes of the meeting of June 25th of 2019, where this particular proposal, this configuration of streets was presented to all of you. And if you read those minutes, Mr. Beer repeatedly asked if this design was acceptable. He was assured that it was. He asked, Mr. Cross was present. I believe Mr. Courtney was present. Mr. Scott was present, and the village attorney was present. What my point simply is, no, I guess Mr. Courtney may not have been present. My point simply is that every one of you had a chance to look at this, and every one of you gave your both implicit and explicit approval to this particular design. And then ultimately between then and November of 2019, there were further meetings. And again, nobody raised objection to this particular design, at least as reflected in these minutes. And so I appreciate the concern, but I have yet to see any actual studies that would suggest that the design of this road, as indicated here, is inherently unsafe. As Mr. Beer has indicated, this design in fact meets all code, meets all design requirements. And it strikes me that as a matter of law, we are simply here not to redesign the project, but to simply ensure that the concerns that were raised at the preliminary and in the subsequent meetings that in effect have been carried out. Now, Mr. Beer and Mr. Wood, Hunt Engineering, they have submitted a final. They have submitted a letter. I think it's a very useful letter. It's the statement of concerns and the responses that we attached to our letter of October 26th, 2021 that we provided to you just prior to the last meeting. It goes through every one of those concerns, and of the approximately 40, of the 31 concerns that were raised by Mr. Courtney, every one but one, which was the alignment of the intersections, has been accepted. And of the 9 concerns, 9 concerns raised by Mr. Cross, the comments and responses, they've all been accepted. So this is not a situation where we're back to the drawing boards. This is a situation where you folks really, as a matter of law, have an obligation to look at this final, see whether or not it responds to the legitimate concerns, the tweaking, if you will, of the preliminary that is permitted, but not the wholesale redesign of the preliminary. And I would ask that instead of going back to the drawing boards over and over and over again, I would suggest if you don't believe that this is acceptable, then vote on it, and we'll take it to the next forum.
May I add, in response to your points, Ray, that it's clear in the code that a mere approval of a preliminary plat is not an approval in any way, shape, or form of a final plat, and the planning board may require additional changes as a result of further study of the subdivision in the final form. The purpose of a preliminary to final plat is not merely to satisfy conditions or concerns brought up during the preliminary phase. The board is well within their rights to request changes beyond those mentioned previously.
I'd also like to add from what Natalie said. I mean, if you want to look that up, Mr. Schleifer, that's section 125-7H4, where it says prior to approval of the final plat, the planning board may require additional changes as a result of further study of the subdivision in final form. Now, it doesn't say in there anything about tweaking or wholesale changes or the definition of either. And I guess my next question is, when you say take it to the next level, what are you actually saying?
Well, my concern here is what ultimately do the courts say about these kinds of disputes? And ultimately, the courts say that, and I'm citing from a case, that a planning board may not modify a preliminary plat and then disapprove of the layout of the final plat that conforms to those modifications that have been prescribed by the board. And indeed, any modification or rejection of a preliminarily approved subdivision layout is an arbitrary and capricious act which is subject to invalidation. So these are cases that go all the way up to the Court of Appeals. The whole point of it is, and if you look at the law states that the term preliminary is somewhat of a misnomer in this context, because absent extraordinary circumstances, a preliminary plat approval finally establishes the primary characteristics design features of a particular subdivision plat. Consequently, preliminary plat approval has a greater weight than a mere informal reaction to a preliminary plat. My point simply is, I appreciate, believe me, I have served in municipal government both as council person and in many, many ways, Board of Public Works, many ways over the years. And I certainly appreciate the work that every one of you does in terms of keeping the water flowing and the toilets flushing and the roads paved, et cetera, in a municipality. And I appreciate that. But I also appreciate that it is a tough world out there when it comes to developers and the amount of money that it costs to go forward with a project. And when the Beer family came to you, spent a year and a half developing this project and presented it, not just pulled it out of the air, but presented it repeatedly to you and your professionals, such that by November of 2019, everyone had bought into it. Yes, there had to be some changes, and certainly the Beards have responded to that. Of the 40 suggested changes, they've accepted 39 of those. The only one that they've pushed back on is this road design. And I'm suggesting that it's really time, when you talk about trying to work together and accommodate and compromise, they have already gone far more than the 50-yard line on this thing. They have done everything, pretty much everything that you've asked of them. And they're just simply saying, come on, we're prepared. We thought a 70-foot right of way was what you folks would like, that most people would like. You want 60 feet? Fine, we'll go to 60 feet, even though that means that the infrastructure is outside of that 60-foot right of way, the stormwater infrastructure, and it's going to have to be, burden the adjacent property owners. On and on and on. They're prepared to do that for you.
I think, first of all, just about that particular item, that was just basically somebody didn't know what our code is. And so some of these things, Mike Baker brought it up last time, many of the things that they conform to are in the code. So, I don't want to get too excited about how much compromise has been made. My concern is they were able to make numerous and extensive changes from the preliminary plat, and yet we are not able to, but that's not what our code says. And Brent Cross has his hand up. So Brent, what do you have for us?
Without trying to get too far into all the history of the steps of it, it's just the one comment that's been repeated multiple times tonight, and I'm not sure that is an accurate statement, is that all features of the roadway are compliant with the code. I'm not sure that that's true. In fact, I think it's not true. I think something that Lisa had alluded to earlier is that as a cluster subdivision, the developer gains certain benefits by seeking the clustering process, and therefore there are compromises that are made, and sometimes those compromises are considered trade-offs for reduction of specifications. But in this case, I can tell you that the history of the timing of it was that, without having a specific chronology here, that from the time when there was originally this thing was more of a PDA or PDZ type proposal, and it took, of that year and a half that's alluded to tonight, most of that time was spent evaluating the pocket neighborhood design. And my recollection is that the amount of time spent on this subdivision was very small. And that's not an excuse, but I'm just trying to frame the amount of energy, time that was put into it. And that once the preliminary approval was given, all of us ended up enduring the pandemic. And I think that there was one significant thing that transpired during that time period, and there was a a long pause of communication between the project and the village. And in that time, there was a complete change in the, at Hunt Engineering. I don't believe that I had ever even met Chris Wood or knew who Chris Wood was until a final subdivision plat was presented to us in 2021. So there was a lot that would have, could have, should have happened during that pandemic time under normal circumstances, but there was a big time gap that fell in there. And I think that in the meantime, when we did give our response to the the final plat, there was a number of things that were pointed out that were inconsistent. And so I ended up speaking a lot longer than I said that I would, but the fact of the matter is I don't know that everything on that subdivision plat road-wise is compliant. And I'm not sure if John is still on, but what I would like the opportunity to do is to get together with the group and go through the code book. And because the one thing that I think John was pointing out that I think is clear to me that there's a challenge is the misalignment of intersections of public roads. It's pretty well known that if you're going to misalign them, you want to misalign them by the maximum amount, not the minimum amount. And I think that the version that you have there, I would consider to be the minimum amount of offset. And that's why I think that we need to take a look at that and either confirm the statement that it is compliant with the code, or in fact, point out that it is not compliant with the code. So I'm sorry it took so long, but it ended up once I started going, it came out. So
Mike, Scott?
Well, I mean, I agree with Brent that we should probably get into this some because there's things like in our code, if it's a secondary road, any roads that connect to the secondary road need to be 800 feet apart. There's a lot of things that we can take a look on this that could discredit that these roads are actually code compliant for the village. And I would ask Mr. Slather if the court cases that he has, well, he hasn't really cited them, but the court cases that he has had to do with cluster subdivisions or just standard subdivisions, because cluster subdivisions are a completely different beast.
I would have to go back, and I've got the excerpts from the cases. I have one here that is not a cluster subdivision. So I can't tell you what the other cases are because I just have the excerpts from them.
I would just like to remind everyone that a cluster subdivision is a negotiation between a planning board and an applicant. A standard subdivision would go by the actual rules and regulations of the actual code of the village or town.
But I would just simply respond to that the rules of law when it pertains to preliminary versus final, they don't change. In other words, that the Court of Appeals and Pine Barren has talked about this. The cases that I've referred to have talked about the principle, and they all go back to that same principle that once preliminary design is granted, you can't wholesale redesign in the final design process.
And I would ask, without getting into an argument, and respectfully, I would ask what wholesale is compared to what the Beers actually did as far as redesigning some of the lots or taking out some of the lots. That would be my question.
So to get back actually to, I'm glad you raised the point, Brent, because you're right. From the very first time the Beer properties came to us with the proposal, it was an informal presentation for the proposed cluster development. And that was in May of 2019. And then at the 11/11/2019, so that's what, 6 months, the preliminary plat was approved. So it was not a year and a half. It was rather quick, as a matter of fact, because I think the PDA their pocket, their very thing, they're rolling everything in, and it's a second proposal to us. So that was the 6 month. Then we did have COVID. The other thing is, the last time we met, there was some, I know that preliminary plats have an extension or have an expiration. And Mr. Schlather, you referred to some of the things that were dictated by the state because of COVID. I was under the impression that we had extended, per the governor's order, I think 120 days, so that the original deadline was, extended 120 days, but you had referred to like a longer period of time. And I wanted to understand that better, because in terms of the actual looking at what I understood from our extension, the preliminary plat expired actually back in November of 2020. So can you clear that
Sure.
up for me?
Okay, so first of all, I thought that ship had already sailed. We funded the escrow based on the representations that we were into the final plat review in this process. And indeed, I think that escrow agreement even acknowledges that this was funded in connection with final plat review. But secondly, the governor, you indeed did, I don't have all of that research immediately at my fingertips, but you indeed did extend, I think it was in July of 20, you extended all deadlines by 120 days, but then the governor by separate determination extended all deadlines. So it's basically a deadline extension of a deadline extension that added, so it was additive, so that when you add all of those times together, the time actually went all the way into about April, late March or April of 2021 would be the tolling deadline. I discussed all of that with Attorney Troy. I provided some, all of the executive orders, reference to them at some point. It's in an email. And I outlined all of that at the time. And I thought based on our meeting at the last time that we had gotten over that hump, but if,
I didn't say that we hadn't, it's just that it was something I needed to understand, because I did not understand that was the case. I thought
Sure.
that we as a village had extended 120 days and that it was based on the governor's, that it wasn't additive. I did not understand that. And I don't think our attorney or Mr. Troy did not share that with us.
All right. In any event, that's where we are on that.
Okay.
But you look, I'll be glad to sit down with my clients, and I obviously you folks aren't prepared to do a vote this evening, and
No, we're not.
it might be it's useful to hear from everybody and find out what their concerns are, and I'll be glad to talk to them. But we are looking to get a decision sooner rather than later, because I think it's been a long time, and I know obviously COVID became a huge factor, but their money is they don't have the deepest pockets that oftentimes developers have. They have a great idea, and if you think about the original plan was really designed. It's somewhat novel, it's radical, and it was designed to try to improve the community in an increasingly, frankly, shrinking world because of COVID. Now it's almost ironic that what they had proposed made a lot of sense, because it was the creation of bubbles. Neighborhood bubbles where people.
Are you talking about are you referring to the PDA now?
No, I'm going off script, but I'm trying to tell you that their original idea actually made a whole lot of sense. They've been dissuaded. They are building what you've asked them to build. But my point.
Well, not exactly. I wouldn't say that they're doing that, but I think that, we do have our general conditions. And there were many fine things in that original plan, but you have to have some sort of fitting in with the neighborhood thing. And it was perhaps just a little ahead of its time or whatever, but it did not work for the village. And so here we are, but I don't want these two projects to get confused with one another, because they're very distinct and separate. And so you know, for them, it's all one, but for us, it is not. It is a separate project. And I guess I'm looking at the code the way our legal counsel is too, in terms of, you know, do we need to go back to the preliminary plat and just use that design? Is that what, but we have to be sure that we integrate this with the surrounding and adjacent properties. Monica, you have a comment?
Yeah, I really would like to see what the alternative would be with, you know, the engineers and getting together to make that four-way intersection, because I feel like that's just due diligence. I would like to see all alternatives on the table. I want to listen to people that are advising us, but I also really like the idea of this neighborhood. So David Beer could show us what they drew up as the alternative to get that four-way intersection and let us know why he doesn't think it fits with his vision. I mean, I might be able to be convinced. I don't know. I like the idea of it. I also want to get a safe road. So, you know, if we could see that secondary plan and how a four-way intersection would look and where the lots would be, I'd be better able to make an informed decision.
I'm sorry, David or Chris, do you guys want to weigh in on this?
You're mute. Oh, there you go.
I would, I'm going to briefly reiterate our vision for the entire neighborhood. And I don't think you can remove the early design work we did with the pocket neighborhoods from what you ultimately approved. And granted, it was watered down largely, but there are elements of the preliminary design that fit into the pocket neighborhood model. And the notion of realigning the intersections and getting the development on more of a grid is taking further away from that pocket neighborhood idea. Like, you know, we considered that we compromised substantially, and it's a matter of pulling more lots out of that pocket neighborhood model. And at a certain point, you know, that's gone too far for us. We don't want to build a standard American subdivision. We want to build something that amounts to a series of cohesive neighborhoods. And the board, you know, watered down our original intentions to something that ultimately we accepted, you accepted, but now you're asking for more. So that's the problem that I have with that, with the entire notion. Now I'll show you that drawing that that Hunt did based on you know, staff's sketch, but you know, just kind of for your information. But I am absolutely not in favor of that drawing, and that is not going to be the drawing that's presented for final approval. You have a package submitted for final plat approval.
So are you willing to sit down with, to go through the code book review of the roads to be sure that they are compliant with code?
I'm perfectly willing to hear the code analysis of you know, village staff and consultants. If you can point out where the existing proposed roads are out of code or do not follow regulations, that's fine. If we've made a mistake and have presented something that does not meet the code, then that's our mistake and we will make alterations. But as you know, everything that Hunt has produced is in their minds to code. And I haven't heard anything from village staff that specifically indicates areas where it's not code compliant. And, you know, they have a lot of opportunity to comment on this design already.
I don't guess that I feel we have, but Mr. Cross, go ahead, Brent.
Yeah, I think that, so I think we just need to take that step forward and it'll prove out one way or the other. But I think that the comments that were provided to the planning board by me have been based on the presumption that as a cluster subdivision, there was certain aspects of the project that were considered worthy of features that were not compliant. And so at that point, you know, there wouldn't have been, I would not have been giving precise chapter and verse as to what was compliant and what was not compliant, only what I thought that the planning board would want to know about that was of value to offsetting the balancing that goes on with a cluster subdivision. But I think that rightfully both sides need to have an official analysis line by line of the road specifications, and I'm prepared to do that.
I have a quick question.
John?
Out of the 49 of the 50 changes they did, or I'm not sure the number. All I received the other day was an overlay of a red and green line map. Was there another attachment to that showing the 49 changes that they did, or whatever?
It was from before.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
from before. It
That
was
was
a letter.
filed. Yeah, it was a letter we filed. It was October 26, 2021 from me to the planning board, and attached to it was a grid.
Right.
Was held up.
Oh, you can't see that, John, but I know that.
Yeah.
And
I would
It was
agree.
circulated among all.
I would agree with John that even though there may have been a written description of acceptance, we don't yet have that as a final plat revision.
No,
I would
but
like to see
I think we were.
plan set, not words. Not words.
Well, that's fair, but I think the whole idea, you know, we were trying to set up the escrow agreement, which we finally, Ms. French and I reached terms on, and we're able to sign it and fund it and advertise for the hearing. All of that was done more recently. But this document, I understand that you want plans and not words, but oftentimes this could be a conditional approval that we simply comply with those particular requirements. And we've agreed to do that in good faith. And if you need to have that work actually done, that's fine. But at the end of the day, the elephant in the room, albeit it has a long memory. But the elephant in the room is the intersection issue. And if we dot all of those I's and cross all of those T's, and we get back and you say, it doesn't matter, the elephant in the room is the elephant in the room, and we're gonna, I'm gonna run out of this metaphor, but we're gonna basically deny this because of that, then frankly, I just assume you deny it because of that now, so that we can test that, as opposed to doing all this other stuff. But if the other stuff, if by doing this other stuff, you folks understand that you're prepared to accept the intersection design, assuming it meets code. I appreciate what you're saying, Mr. Cross. Assuming that it meets code and meets all those requisite standards, then fine. We will gladly go ahead and do that. It makes sense. It's costly, but it makes sense.
I don't agree with it then. I can't commit to the elephant in the room just by the 49 other items. That's not how I roll. I need,
Well,
you know.
No, we need
As
to
far
know.
as, just so I interrupted, as far as the final plat goes, Mr. Slather, I'll send you a list of what's required for the planning board to be able to approve something like that. There'll just be a checklist for you, a punch list or whatnot of what we need. That way you're fully aware of what we do actually need as per our code. So I'll send that to you and the beers.
Thank you very much. That'd be appreciated.
And then how is this gonna work? Who's gonna be, Brent and John, will you meet with who?
I think Brent, John, and myself, I think we should meet and take a look at the roads at this point and come up with information to pass along to possibly Chris Wood and Mr. Schlather and the Beers. Unless
Okay.
you want to add someone else, Brent and John, unless you want to add someone else to it. Or probably Dondi also, Arner.
Yeah, I'm available to do that quickly.
That sound okay, John, Courtney?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, so that'll be, we'll see what comes of that, but yes, no, we're not in a position to, Mr. Schlather, say yea or nay this evening. We don't have enough information.
Sorry, Ms. Shaling.
We don't,
Shaling.
no, we are not in a position to take any action other than that this evening.
Okay, I understand.
Does anybody else have any other comments?
So could we, I'm sorry, I beg your pardon. Ms. Mall had her hand up.
I was just wondering, so is that alternative drawing, are we never going to see that? I mean, because I might end up hating it and then liking the original road and being for this drawing, but I can't make that decision unless I see what our engineers have suggested. as an alternative.
I'll make sure you see it. I'll make sure you get it.
Thank you.
You want to send that to Mike
Yeah.
Scott so he can send it to the full board, please?
We will do that.
Okay.
Um,
Can I
So-
add to that? Can I interrupt you for a sec? So
What?
I'm going back to the first thing that we heard today from the Beers, and that is changing the intersection would change the character.
Yeah.
So when you send us this alternative, could you please indicate any way you want why it changes the character? I hear the notion that it would eliminate some aspect of pocket neighborhoodness. So I want to see that with my eyes. I want you to point out why an alternative intersection would decrease the character being togetherness in a pocket neighborhood. Please do that. Don't let us try to imagine it. Tell us exactly what you mean by it.
We'll highlight that.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Could we, just in terms of, I know the holidays are upon us or have passed, but they're in this season. Is there any chance that we can get this back on the agenda for the first meeting in January, which I believe is January 10th? Is that accurate?
That is correct.
I mean, it will require Mr. Scott and Mr. Cross and Mr. Courtney to get their work done before that, but we will do our work by then, and I'd appreciate if they could as well.
I think they've expressed that they're willing to.
Fair enough.
So you would like
So,
on the agenda on 1/10/22.
Thank you.
okay. If there are no other comments, I think that's it for this agenda item this evening.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Yes.
Thank
Good
you.
night now.
Next item on the agenda is other business. So Mike sent to us the proposed lighting code. I hope everybody took some time to read that.
Lisa, what the, and feel free, either John or Tony, to correct me if I'm wrong, but I'll pull this up here. I would say 3 or 4 meetings ago, you suggested a couple of changes. At the time, it had to do with public, I believe it had to do with public lights, in which we made those changes. Actually, we made the changes at the meeting. I remember Brent had some words to say about that, and also at the time, Bill Troy had also wanted some things changed. We went ahead and did that. I believe, like I said, we changed them right at the meeting. The planning board, or not planning board, the lighting commission had gotten together and made some minor changes to the wordings in 3. Is that right, Tony and John? We changed 3, right?
Correct.
And then also,
What, non-essential lighting?
yeah, the non-essential lighting.
D3.
To try to-
D3, I would say, okay, thank you.
The
Yep, oh, no.
D3, yeah, the issue was, it was kind of hard to understand what was meant by the 50%. So we also came up with an example of what 50% would be if you had dimmable lights, and then if you didn't have dimmable lights. That'll be the next page here. I just wanted to show you what some of these changes were in D3.
Yeah, Bill Troy asked us to provide examples. You might recall that from our meeting, and we did that.
So will these examples be part of the appendix to
Yes.
this code? So maybe we could put thereafter D3, see appendix, if that's the case, because I would like them to really get it. But okay,
You want to put it after D3? We'll see appendix, whatever.
Yes, good idea.
I'd have to look and see what appendix it would be, but I will put that in.
well, right,
I'll put that in there.
because you gave the 2 examples then.
Did you want to see the 2 examples, to see if they were acceptable?
I have them if you, proposed examples, subject is a retail building with a parking lot and business closes at 10. There you go. Total number of exterior lights are 10. If exterior lighting is dimmable, lights above entries and delivery areas can remain at full capacity. Full capacity be 3000 Kelvin. Is that what that means? Yep. Remaining lights must be dimmed 50% 1/2 hour after business hours. If exterior lighting is not dimmable, lights above entries can remain at full capacity. Using the subject building above, if there is 1 entry light and 1 delivery area, then only 3 other lights will be allowed to remain on 1/2 hour after. Okay, so meaning if there are 10 lights, okay. All right, I guess.
Can I just bring an example though? You know, the max foot candles at the surface or lumens is 5, which it'll never exceed that technically according to the law. So if they did dim them down to say 50%, it's, 2.5 foot candles, which is reasonable amount of lighting. So I mean, I think those 2 examples, in my opinion, were nicely crafted by Mike.
Mike's a good craftsman.
So I think we've been through this. So is this ready? Did you want us to send this along then to the trustees? Is that our,
Yeah, if you're, I mean, I don't know whether, Natalie, whether they should vote or not, but if you're prepared to send us along, then I will put it in proposed law form and send it to the Board of Trustees, in which they'll look it over, and if they want to make any changes, they could involve you with any other changes. And then at that point, if they set a public hearing, then I have to let people know 10 days ahead of time. I have to send it to the county. The process starts pretty much.
I mean, we went through this pretty carefully, but did everybody take another look at it or feel comfortable with going forward with this?
Yeah.
I do. I think it's, I think it's been through its paces with the commission and us. And I think we can vote to recommend it to the I think we should vote to recommend it
vote.
to, yeah, I would too, to vote to recommend it to the Board of Trustees for adoption in the code. So might I have a motion to do that?
I move that we recommend the current lighting code draft to the trustees to consider for law.
Second,
I'll second.
Monica. So Mike to Monica, those in favor? Aye. Good. So go for it. Nice. This is like our second. So we've done sidewalks. We've done lighting now. I think
Accessory buildings, sorry, what? Solar.
solar's on the list, but it's a very long policy, and it's going to take some time. I have in mind short-term rental
Yeah.
as well, being maybe even more urgent, but I think the most important thing that I realize now is that we need to make some changes to our special permitting and even perhaps some other parts of our code. Lessons learned from some of our experiences that we've had over the past couple of years. And I honestly, we just have to make time for that. I don't care if we just bump people. It's just, we have to tighten our code so there's no confusion and that we don't have people stalling stop work orders by saying, oh, the code doesn't say this. So I think, thank you everyone for really working together to get us through special permit for Lansing Meadows. I think it's as good as we can expect.
Thank you for your diligence, especially tonight. You didn't have the opportunity that we had to turn off our video and think about something else, because we were absolutely certain that you were going to do the right thing for all of us. And thank you for doing it.
I know that I have your full support. That was so clear last meeting that I think it just really clarified, okay, if we want to do this, the board is so solidly together. It was really a pleasure to have everyone be so single-minded on that, because we don't always agree, but pretty much we do, but it really was so clear. And I'm glad. So now we have a new challenge, but we will prevail one way or the other. But I really want to get to that. So Natalie, I don't know, we should talk about that with Mike and stuff. And if anybody has any thoughts, but we really need to tighten up some of our process and procedures as it's in a special permit. So I think some of this stuff it served us well, but it's old and times are changing, so at any rate, has everybody been able to finish their compliance training? I did not realize, I was so embarrassed. I did not realize, but Jody had been sending these things and I thought, oh, I've got plenty of CE credits. I didn't even open her emails. I did confess. And we do have that mandatory training. Now, Monica, if you haven't been able to attend, you can do the sexual harassment one online. I can send you the link that Jody or somebody sent me. And then there are, we do have virtual training for the others too, but I think we need a passcode or something. But the village is part of the Compliance Alliance. So I think we don't have to pay to do that. But if you're gonna have to get to do it. I guess that it's kind of, I didn't realize, Jim and I were on, both of us today, and it actually was fine. And it went, he was very good, I thought, and the problem being, the only exposure is that should we not all be educated every year, there's kind of a New York State version of OSHA called PESH. And if they should walk in the door and discover we aren't all trained or whatever, they can be some ramifications, but it's unlikely, but it would be good if you could possibly make the time. I don't know who else. Jim?
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, you were talking about a code or something. It was very easy. And I didn't expect an answer Saturday afternoon, but I just sent Mr. Blasdell an email just saying I was a member of the village planning board, have to complete training, and could he please send me the link or whatever? And an hour later, I got an email with the link in it, so all I had to do was click on it this morning. And I know they've got a couple other ones in December. And I'll also say it was interesting.
It was
Yeah, it was-
interesting, actually. I must say.
Yeah.
It's not bad. It took almost 2 hours, but then you're done. So whatever.
I've got to do the sexual harassment yet. Maybe I'll do that tonight.
It's the same one we did last year. Pretty soon I'm going to know all of what she's going to say. I'll know all the case studies she gives us. Oh, this was Luann and Paul or somebody, whatever.
If you could forward me the links, I'll do them because I know I got emails, but I always thought they were for Simon because he did the training, but I have not done it. So.
Oh, geez.
If it makes it easier, Jody can talk to Sean Rowe and get you a passcode, password and everything, and you can log in and you can take it whenever it's convenient for you. You can do
Yeah.
a few minutes sessions and then you can log out and go do what you got to do and then come back to it and take off where you left off. It really works nice that way for us.
Although I will say, I've just decided I'm just going to devote this 2 hours, get it off my plate. And he was a good presenter. The presenter's decent. Yeah, he really was, considering, because some of these are pretty dull, but it was okay. Okay, so any other business that people have? Any exciting things happening in our village, Mike, we should know about? That are just routine.
I don't think there's anything that I didn't mention last time. I mentioned something about Aldi's coming in to the cubicle.
Oh, yes. Did
What?
everybody know that Aldi is coming into the old Rite Aid space?
Well, at least let's put it this way. At least I have, they give me a building permit that I'm reviewing. They aren't required to do, they aren't required to have a special permit because it's no change in use with no change in parking. What else? The mall. We're waiting on the mall's financial, I guess they're waiting on the bank to tie things up for them to be able to subdivide and possibly sell off some of the properties. After that, no, I mean, there's a few other things that I'm not allowed to get into just yet, but it's nothing overwhelming.
Okay.
Tony has his hand up, Lisa.
Oh, I can't see you. Go ahead. I'm not looking in the right place. There you are. You moved. Somebody moved. You
Here I
guys
am.
move around.
Look.
I can't keep it straight. Yes, go ahead.
I don't know if you all received a copy of the county housing report today by email, but if you haven't,
Read
it's
it.
well worth reading.
Good. I haven't gotten to it because we had a lot going on today, but
Yeah, and it's like note that our village has increased in population.
oh, it has finally.
Yes. And
Well,
but
is that
the breakdown by village, the breakdown by town, and then the kinds of housing that has been provided in the shortfalls in the various categories are highlighted. So I think it's really important for us as a planning board to review that at some point independently so that we have that knowledge as we go ahead.
Yeah, no, I know that when I worked with Deb Dawson on the comprehensive plan, it's really quite interesting to see. It really highlights, and I don't know whether our demographic has changed with this population increase, but whether we're still getting older or not, but
We're getting older.
yeah,
We're
still.
also getting less.
We all are getting older,
less
but
young.
less young.
Lisa, can I ask one thing also, because I gotta do the minutes? There's someone on here that's LG's Stylo 4.
Stylo 4?
I need a name if I could, please, if that person could let me know who it is for the minutes.
LG Stylo 4, are you there? Maybe not.
Okay.
I don't know. I am not a robot. I don't know. Okay, if there's no other business, we have a trustee report. Did the trustees meet on earlier
Not on the 6th.
12/6? Who was supposed to do that? Was that Tony? Monica? One of you?
Not
I
me.
guess nobody.
Maybe it's me. I don't know. No, I don't think it's me. I can't
Well,
remember.
I don't know who went to the previous one. Tony
I
did,
did,
didn't you?
I did the two previous.
Oh.
Tony did December. Or, sorry, wow, November.
Maybe it is me. I don't know.
Oh, well, I guess you didn't do it, right?
No, I didn't if it was me. Sorry. I can find out though.
Was-
The trustees
didn't-
meeting, they talked about the solar law that they're probably gonna be sending your way eventually, canceled the holiday party.
Oh, that's right. Where did I see this stuff too? It wasn't anything too dramatic
It
anyway.
wasn't, it was a short meeting.
And there wasn't anything that really impacted us per se, except for, in terms of the planning board, except for the solar, which I
Yes,
think we're
will be
aware.
coming your way eventually to review.
I think well, Tony and I have seen it because we were
Yes.
working with Carolyn about it. But the rest of it, but it's very extensive and Mike is trying to figure out how this is going to fit into our book exactly. But it's like, it's one of those things, kind of like the telecommunications thing, which just goes on and on and on for pages. And I don't know if there's any way to change that, honestly, and still get what you need. So I don't know. I think probably not, but it's going to be interesting. Okay, so
Carolyn's done a really good job of streamlining what was there,
yeah, she really has. She's done a really nice job.
but everything that's there, I think at this point, given the way the technology keeps evolving, everything that's there is necessary at this point. But likely
But
to
it's
change again,
long.
4 or 5 years out.
Yeah, well, this isn't going to sit still. That's for sure. So I don't know. So now our next meeting, didn't want to get into it tonight when he said, can we get on the next? But do we think that, do we have anything for 12/28? No?
If you're not gonna do the beers, then
Well, he said January 10th and I was taking him up on it. I wasn't going to mention the
which is actually, which is actually good because you're not gonna get much done that week before, you know, with Christmas.
No, I was going to say it's a lost week for most everyone.
Yeah.
So shall we vote to cancel? I think we should. Yes. May I, do you agree, Mike
I
Scott?
move that we cancel the 28th meeting.
Second,
Monica to Tony. All those in favor? It is
There you go.
unanimous. Oh my gosh, that's so exciting.
I thought the chair could do that unilaterally.
Okay,
But
then
that's-
that means, but I have done who has to cover the trustee meetings for next year. So Jim, January 3rd and January 17, Board of Trustees. You're our liaison.
Yeah, I think I remember you told me I was leading off in January.
Yeah. I think it feels like it's coming sooner just because, you swapped, I think, with Monica at some point, whatever, but at any
Yeah.
rate.
Sorry, I dropped the ball in that meeting.
Oh, well, there won't be. I think it will forgive you. Okay, anything else? If not, I just hope everybody has a wonderful holiday.
You too.
yes.
The students are leaving at the end of the week.
Yes.
Not too soon. I hope they bring.
I
the
was going to
kids out
say,
with them.
when do I dare go downtown?
I was going to say that the provost sent the email that said, you should really, when you're done with finals, leave as soon as possible
Yes,
so that
please.
you don't miss your flight or travel plans home because you're quarantined, which is the really nice way of saying if you're going to be sick, don't do it here.
Right.
Go home. Do it at home.
That's right. Absolutely true. God, that would be sad, but that didn't.
Oh my gosh, it's out of control.
Oh, well.
Anyway, I move that we adjourn.
And Tony seconds. Mike Baker to Tony and Graffia
What
at
time?
9:15. All those in favor?
Aye.
Don't forget to stop recording, Mike, if people want to talk about the holiday season.
Hang on a second.
Bye, everybody.